I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Maze Elansari. Maze, thank you for giving up your time and joining the Q&A. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your story. So a quick, very quick context for people who are listening who may not be familiar with your background. So an award-winning senior marketing director. You've got a lovely breadth in terms of the sectors that you've worked in. So F&B, hospitality, retail, luxury, very much global in terms of the kind of brands and the locations that you've worked at. Subway being one of the kind of more recent big well-known brands, Penhaligons, and obviously you spent a lot of time with Alshaya as well out in the Middle East. So really lovely and diverse and varied, and I know that will kind of form your stories. You talk us through that, but thank you for giving up your time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. And actually, I'd love to just shout out to you, Suzie, because I actually have
Yay!
your book. So congratulations on your new book. I haven't gone through it all, but I definitely will want you to sign it for me next time I see you at an event. But I'm super chuffed and excited for you. So this is, I think, is a perfect timing, especially in the market. And we were just discussing earlier about like the real need and I think the practical tools that you're helping to kind of reach as many people as possible, I think is really inspiring. So congratulations on that first.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that. I've been really clear on my overall purpose now, which is to support 1 million people. And the only way I could do that was writing a toolkit. And it's been just fantastic. All the messages that have come inbound, the pictures, the notes. Yeah, just awesome. Thank you very, very much. And I can't wait. You know, we're gonna get the message out there, get people to support us and share this toolkit. And people are already saying it's really comforting and reassuring to have something that they can follow. So I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let's dive in. So I know that your background is fascinating, and let's start, if we may. Would you do a bit of an insight into your career to date, the journey, and any key bits that you'd like to share, highlights, if you like, from along the way?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I guess starting at the beginning, I was always really fascinated into kind of the creative side of the business. And I kind of jumped straight into advertising world when I joined McCann Erickson, a while ago. But I was on the account management side, leading global brands like MasterCard and Ricketts, as you had mentioned, on a regional basis, and then more the kind of luxury brand like Tiffany and Co, and then more pharmaceutical Johnson and Johnson in the UK. And it was really exciting because to your point, you kind of get a cross section of a variety of sectors and industries, the different sizes of companies, the geographical kind of footprint, and then, you know, multi-brands versus individuals. So really getting that diversification really set me up, I would say, from an experience perspective, learning how to be adaptable and flexible, but then obviously understanding how local and regional brands work. So I deep dived into those kind of cultural nuances, understanding kind of consumer behavior, and how strategy and creativity, I guess, work together hand in hand. So I did that for 10 years. I moved over to BBDO in the Middle East, working on their second largest bank out there, again, utilizing the experience that I had from MasterCard. But very quickly realized, you know, actually I wanted to be at the forefront of the brand side, kind of really encompassing the whole brand and marketing rather than just the advertising side. And so I jumped over to, as you say, Alshaya, where I was headhunted to lead the brand and the strategy. And for those who might not know Alshaya, it's a huge a franchise company based out in Kuwait. And the first brand that I joined was Pinkberry, which is a frozen yogurt brand. And it was really exciting because the reason that I was brought in was to make sure that we weren't just focused on the operational side of the business, which was great, but we really needed to think about the brand and the strategy and the customer and really putting them at the heart of the business. And so that was really exciting time. And very quickly, then I got promoted to lead the marketing for the food division, and had a portfolio of brands, as you mentioned. So from Dean and Deluca, Sprinkles Cupcakes,
Yep.
popcorn, 400 gradi. I mean, the list goes on for a while, but I probably, to your point about some of the highlights, I'd say a pinch me moment was really working with Chef Thomas Keller, who combined has 7 Michelin stars, to bring to life his Bouchon Bakery brand from the US to the Middle East. So working with him, who's a creative and food genius, was definitely an absolute honor. And I was there for around 7 years, so very exciting, kind of building up the team, kind of delivering the kind of end-to-end for all the brands. But then came back to the UK and jumped in and thought another challenge would be to do a different sector, which was joining Penhaligons, as you mentioned, a beautiful heritage British brand, and trying to find ways of how to kind of reach out onto different younger audiences, modernize the brand a little more, and integrate kind of, I guess, that customer experience across different channels. And then leading to, I guess, my last big role, which is going back to my F&B roots, joining Subway as head of marketing for the UK and Ireland, managing 2,500 stores, and really kind of integrating and thinking about how do we elevate the brand and make it a bit more, I guess, relevant. And then got promoted to marketing director for EMEA, and moving that kind of, taking that thinking and that strategy, though what I had done for the UK and Ireland, and moving that to over 20 markets and 6,000 stores. So that was really exciting. And my last current, I guess, position and role that I've stepped into is as interim marketing director at Stonegate, working across 4,000 sites of pubs, bars, and venues. So very much in the hospitality field right now.
It's been a fantastic and very diverse kind of journey that you've taken, the different brands, the different geographies. Sort of listening there, one of the key threads that goes through it is brand. So would it be fair to say that one of the key things that has followed through is that brand strategy has been a core part of all of those roles?
Yeah, 100%. I think to your point, thinking about the strategy, what's been exciting as a generalist marketeer is that I oversaw A to Z. So everything from the brand and the strategy, comms, creative, digital, social, CRM, MPD, and insights. You really have such a big remit and scope to make sure that, I guess, it starts with the thinking and looking at the guests and trying to diagnose what are the problems to solve at each of the different companies or brands that I've worked on. And I think that's, I would say, a big tribute to a lot of my squiggly career, right? The experience that I've had. It's, we all have our different superpowers. And I would definitely say that having that agility, having those transferable skills and knowledge of understanding how marketing can play that wider role, has really helped me. And I think to your part, when we think about the strategy is, understanding when I've had roles on global level, for example, that gives us a much bigger, wider macro scale. When I've worked on a regional perspective, that's probably a little more on, rolling out, scaling up and a bit of structure. And then when I've worked on local roles, that kind of, on the ground experience, right? The kind of real business problems, and really thinking about the customer experience and the journey. So having that ability to kind of optimize and leverage that experience, I think, has added a lot of depth to how I can approach things. But to your point, making sure that the strategy, I guess, is at the heart of it, and how do we play that back from a guest perspective.
And you mentioned there about the team. So you will have managed global teams. How do you approach leading a global, and by definition, clearly in some places, remote team?
Yeah.
Any sort of techniques that you've learned over the years for doing that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely have to say my leadership style has really evolved over time, with every part of our, journey and our leadership. And I've definitely had my fair share of mistakes, but I think, we all learn from those. And I think the foundation, at least for me, that I've really tried to, I guess, improve along the way is, building that trust, having the clarity, and making sure that the two-way communication is always open in there. And as you mentioned, especially for me in my regional roles, whether here in the UK or in the Middle East, having that local understanding and cultural nuances have been really important to understand and help navigate some of those conversations. And then, clearly putting out what does good look like, what are the successes for the team along with the business, and marrying those two together. So having those, I guess, clear objectives and building that two-way communication, because it takes a lot of time, as you'll appreciate. It's not something that is earned overnight, but hopefully with you, when you build your experience and your know-how, you bring it to the table, it definitely helps elevate those relationships.
I think you're right to say that leadership style evolves as well, doesn't it? You know, the more experiences we have, we take learnings from each role that we do, and our style will, you know, develop as a result of that.
Yeah.
So we talked
To your
about
point,
branding.
though, I would say, oh, sorry, I was just going to add
No?
one more point is, I think the other thing that I've learned along the way from a leadership perspective is, I don't know about yourself, but I always felt like I had to have all the answers. And that's not necessarily the case.
You have too much questions to ask, I think, really, don't you?
Well, it's true though. I mean, and the reality is, I think, of course, as leaders, we'll always have, again, like I said, the kind of overall strategy and having the vision and bringing everyone on the journey. But sometimes it's kind of enabling the next generation and the team to kind of come back with their own perspective, their own, ideas. And so therefore it's kind of creating that space to, I guess, enable them to grow. So that's always a fun one for leaders to always think about.
And in terms of what leaders are thinking about currently, so if you think of, senior marketers on that to-do list at the moment, you're incredibly well networked. You've got a huge peer group of senior marketing leaders. What are the topics that are coming up that are the kind of current urgent priorities, would you say, for senior marketing leaders at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think it's a really interesting and kind of almost pivotal moment for senior marketeers. And I feel like the C-suite board are finally seeing the real value of marketing. And I think we talked about this last time where we talked about it being seen as the engine for growth, the real ability for a long term and strategy, right? We talk about brand strategy. It's not just about the kind of immediate sales driving initiatives, which is easy. So the key three things that marketeers I think are at the forefront of our minds are really the kind of growth of how we can find innovative ways to drive growth within the brand and the business. People, right, and the team, thinking about how we can empower, we can upskill, we can kind of engage and build on that. And then the reality is technology, when we think about AI and how it's kind of coming in, not just from an efficient kind of cost efficiency and productivity, but how can we elevate, whether it's creativity, and what that kind of strategy looks forward there. So I think there's a nice combination from a marketing perspective is, driving that value for the business. But there is a big shift, as you say, and having been crowned Queen of Events last year by my peers, which was very humbling. But to your point, I hear, and we continue to kind of network and hear those conversations on the ground. And there has been a shift within those kind of rooms and conversations that the commercial and growth impact that marketing has on a business, is really important and viable. And that's where the strategy and the thinking comes in.
I firmly believe that right now. We've seen a real shift in the language used, the content of the briefs in the last 12 months, particularly with regards to kind of private equity. I'll be honest, where marketing is very much seen as the engine for growth, and will firmly have a seat at the boardroom table. I think it's a very exciting and pivotal time for senior marketers right now. And I know it's not all easy by any stretch, but I think there's some really exciting stuff that's kind of happening at the moment as well.
Yeah. And it's a continual journey, as you said, right? I mean, it's not something that happened overnight. It's a continual conversation where marketing and marketeers are, trying to carve that narrative to really showcase and celebrate the value that we bring to brands, businesses, innovation teams, etc. So I think it doesn't stop here, now we're kind of at that cusp, and I think that's the exciting bit.
But in terms of sharing advice, if you think back to the earlier days in your career, we were having people who will listen to this who will be senior marketing manager level, head of marketing manager level, who aspires to be director, senior director, ultimately go on to kind of C-suite. guidance would you share? What are those amazing bits of guidance that people shared with you along the way that have really helped you on your journey? Is there anything that you would share with our audience?
Yeah, for sure. I think the key thing I would always start with is yourself. Like, be really clear and have that clarity on what values and what you're looking for. And sometimes it's easier to look at what you're not looking for or what you don't want. That helps a lot of the times, So it's okay, for example, that you don't want to be the next CEO. That's great. You don't want to do that. Focus on being the next CMO. That's great. And so what are those steps that are going to get you there? And part of that, I would always say, and again, having gone through that journey myself more recently, being visible, I can't stress how important it is. The kind of the visibility is your currency language that we talk a lot about. So as you say, attending events, networking, kind of going out into the community and reaching out. I mean, we have an extremely receptive and very generous, I would say, marketing community. So when you do reach out, even if it's for a conversation or a 5-minute chat or a coffee, there's no harm in asking. I think, that it's really important that you kind of put yourself out there and actively want to engage with the community. And part of that visibility is also, as LinkedIn is really important. I think it's, such a great channel to leverage. And I guess you can celebrate your achievements, but more importantly, what is the value that you can bring to, potential, hiring managers, to your community, whether it's kind of learning or putting content out there. So I think that visibility is really important, and there's multiple opportunities there. Mentorship, as in we talk a lot about kind of that relationships and the kind of a breadth of experience and knowledge. So, I definitely would encourage everyone to reach out to whether existing kind of connections or individuals that you kind of inspired by, and having I guess a great team or friends of cheerleaders who can help and support you within, rooms that you might not be in, but can help you really kind of elevate that conversation and bring your, name to positive lights. And then it's funny enough, I was at the Technology for Marketing event a couple of months ago, and I heard, I'm sure Rachel Moss, and she pointed this out, which is a really important point, is sometimes we forget to manage and connect with our peers and go sideways, and we always think about managing upwards, and sometimes it's a little underrated that we don't also kind of form those relationships with our peers. I think that's really important and a great piece of advice that, I would continue to kind of encourage everyone when you're looking for your next role. And then I think just kind of have that courage and kind of energy around going for something that you really want, showing up, being persistent, being consistent, and having that ambition and being really unapologetic about it. So I think that's, what I would probably say to myself, my younger self, and to anyone else in the industry. I mean, I'm sure there's loads more, but I think those for me, I felt are quite ring true to myself. And I think what, I try to live by it.
Well, what about positivity and mindset, Maze? I talk about this a lot. I firmly believe that it's absolutely crucial, to the point where I put a whole chapter on mindset and magnetism in the book. I think it is the difference between, becoming a successful candidate or not. You are brilliant in terms of positivity and mindset. What tips could you share on that?
Very generous. Yeah. I mean, it's been a game changer for me. I would definitely think that, I'm very intentional with my, not just time, but my energy. So to your point, I think, when you realize, I was very fortunate. Actually, my coach a couple of years ago said a line that I'll never forget, and I'm sure this will probably resonate with you, which was, if it doesn't serve you, just let it go. And it's something so simple, and it is harder actually than it sounds. But the reality is I've never looked back since that. I apply it across both, from a personal and a professional perspective. That energy is really contagious, and I think you mentioned this in one of our conversations where we were talking about how you want to surround yourself with kind of radiators, right, rather than drainers. And I think, you can have a lot of energy inside, and, some people will maybe gravitate more to positive energy, and others maybe not so much. But I think, you've got to be intentional with your time and energy. So for me, I find that I recharge a lot when I build and I network and I'm around my people and teams. And I think that I love to give and I love to kind of also, receive. And I think that's, really important for me. I love staying kind of curious and constantly wanting to learn and improve. And then, as I said, kind of giving back and mentoring. So to your point, how do you keep that up? Those are the main, I guess, levers that I help to kind of fill up my cup, and making sure that that's something that is a constant work in progress, right? So whether it's connecting with friends at the marketing society and attending events and trying to give back, or it's joining podcasts with you, I think is really important because last year I really recognized that I had said no for so long, having kind of really focused on businesses and the brands and the team. There was a huge opportunity for me to kind of put my head up a little and realize actually I needed to put the oxygen mask on first. And that realization of actually I'm going to actively now start saying yes to things really lifted up my energy because I was able to kind of build all my confidence, open up to kind of unexpected opportunities that I probably wouldn't have been exposed to before. And so that's been really exciting for me. And part of my strategy is saying yes to, joining MadFest and being a host on, the creativity, stage and things like that. I think are really important that we continue to see the importance of these things. They're not nice to haves. I think we need to carve intentional time to make sure that we are, learning, being curious and giving back.
That's the key word, isn't it? Is intentional. You said at the beginning of your answer that you are intentional as to how you choose to act, think, behave, how you spend your time to maintain that positive energy. And I love that advice you were given. If it doesn't serve you, let it go. And that's a lot easier to say and harder to do. And it takes practice. But great piece of advice.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, listen, with anything, it doesn't happen overnight. But I think to your point, if you genuinely believe in something, we all have the determination and the persistence. And I think that's why if you believe in it, it becomes much easier. It shouldn't be hard work. But then if it is, you then just have to put something into practice and just work on it. Again, something that might be really easy for me won't be for you. And I think it's about, that's why I love listening and learning from others. And I think that to me is where we can all we should be sharing much more of our experiences. And likewise, if anyone from your listeners wants to reach out on LinkedIn, drop me a line. I'm happy to kind of have offline conversations because I think it's really important and behests on us to kind of keep those conversations alive.
Thank you. That is very generous and very typical of you, Maze. You're a really lovely lady. Thank you for that. Fantastic answers. I think everyone will love listening to that. And thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.